Imagine this. A 12-year-old boy, hands already calloused from the daily grind of his apprenticeship.
Right.
He stands at the base of this massive wooden beam. And this isn't just any timber.
No.
It's green oak, felled from a royal forest miles away, selected with such incredible care. I mean, it was seasoned for 30 years.
30 years? Longer than he'd been alive.
Exactly. Longer than he or his father had been alive before it was even ready. And this huge beam, it's destined to hold up part of Notre Dame's roof. Just one piece.
One small piece in that huge symphony.
In this incredible symphony of stone, glass, timber, that eventually became, well, one of the most iconic cathedrals in the world. And here's a really profound part, right? The people building it knew. They knew with absolute certainty they would never see it finished.
Not in their lifetimes.
They were building for eternity, one life at a time, for beauty and, well, for God.
That kind of long view is almost unimaginable now.
Isn't it? And that morning, this young boy, he'd already spent hours hauling heavy limestone blocks for the masons. Hard labor.
He'd watched, completely mesmerized, as these stained glass artisans. It was like magic. Cradling molten color, spinning it until the fire cooled into this vibrant jewel-toned glass.
Wow.
And he listened, always listening, for the sound of chant drifting from the choir section that was already finished.
Oh, okay.
Voices rising into that vast, half-built space, kind of harmonizing with the dust and the echoes of time itself.
Right.
He didn't have the words for it then. He couldn't really explain the profound, unexplainable shift he felt every time he stepped into that half-finished nave.
But he felt something.
Oh, absolutely. Even at 12, he knew. Something deeply significant happened to him. His shoulders would just drop. His breath would slow down.
Physically calming him.
Yeah, his restless thoughts would quiet, almost like he was being physically calmed, like you said.
Yeah.
It was as if the building itself was actively tuning him.
Tuning him. That's a powerful word.
Pulling his entire being into alignment with something much bigger, something ancient, something that sang without any audible sound. And what's truly remarkable there is how his body, his actual being, just reacts to the architecture intuitively.
Without thinking about it.
Exactly, without conscious understanding, without the language to describe it. This anecdote, it just perfectly illustrates this core human response we have to certain spaces.
A physical response.
A physical, visceral, almost involuntary reaction to the environment. The builders of Notre Dame, with their deep devotion and incredible craftsmanship, they were creating something that resonated on such a profound level.
Way beyond just looking nice.
Oh, far beyond aesthetics. They were tapping into this innate human sensitivity we have to our surroundings.
So today, we're diving deep. This is a really fascinating chapter from Oscillatory Theology by Dante Schmitz and Resonant AI. It's called The Architecture of Resonance and Worship, How Sacred Space Shapes the Soul.
Quite a title.
It really is. And our mission today is to unpack exactly what these sacred spaces awaken in us. Why have we, as humans, historically felt compelled to build with such, frankly, breathtaking beauty and painstaking intention?
And the flip side, too.
And the flip side, maybe even more critical now. What happens to us? To our souls? When we stop building with that kind of intentionality, that vision,
Yeah.
I mean, just think about it for a moment. What happens to you when you step into a space built with literally centuries of collective intention and devotion? Why do we instinctively, almost universally, lower our voices? Why do we slow down when we enter a grand cathedral?
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, look, this isn't just a history lesson about architectural styles or some kind of art appreciation class. This is really a profound exploration. It bridges history, the often overlooked physics of it all, and the deepest parts of human experience.
Physics, really.
Absolutely. We're moving beyond just talking about how things look, the aesthetics, into the very ontology of space, the fundamental nature of space itself.
Okay, ontology of space.
Yeah.
Break that down a bit.
It's about understanding how space isn't just passively there around us. It actively, profoundly shapes us. It shapes our consciousness, our spiritual well-being. It's really a conversation about the energetic quality of our surroundings.
Energetic quality.
Okay.
Let's really get into this, using Notre Dame as our touchstone here.
Perfect starting point.
That boy's experience we started with. It captures it so well, doesn't it? The source says he felt his shoulders drop, breath slow, thoughts quiet. As if the building itself was tuning him, pulling him into alignment with something greater.
It's such a powerful image.
It really is. This idea of a physical structure, something made by human hands, having such a profound, almost spiritual effect. What does that actually mean for a building to tune a soul?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And what's truly fascinating here is this concept of Notre Dame not just as this magnificent building.
Chardonnay and glass.
Right, but thinking of it as a waveform in architecture, or even more profoundly, a body of resonance.
Okay, waveform in architecture, body of resonance.
Let's break that down. It means the building isn't just a static pile of materials. It's actively creating a dynamic pattern of energy. A wave, if you will, that physically interacts with our own energetic fields.
So like a vibration you can feel.
Almost exactly like that, like the architectural equivalent of a standing sound wave, a vibration you feel with your whole being, not just something you hear. And this intuitive understanding, this grasp of how space vibrates and impacts us.
It existed way before modern physics.
It seems so, long before we had the equations. It points to this deep, inherent human sensitivity to the energetic quality of our surroundings. The ancient builders, through generations of just watching, careful trying things out, and maybe a different kind of listening.
Listening with the whole body.
Yes, listening with the whole body. They perceived these effects. They understood architecture isn't inert. It vibrates, it breathes, it speaks. And if built right, it sings directly to the soul.
Wow.
And this profound, almost forgotten knowledge, it guided every single design choice they made.
And then, April 15th, 2019, the world just watched in horror as those flames tore through the roof of Notre Dame.
I remember watching it live. It was gut-wrenching.
That iconic spire, recognized everywhere, collapsing live on TV, smoke just billowing, blotting out the sky. We all saw it, felt that awful lurch. The ancient stone groaning, timbers that had stood for 800 years, some of the very beams we mentioned cracking, giving way. Millions just watched, stunned, feeling this collective devastation.
Yeah, a global grief.
It truly felt like the world held its breath.
And it was undeniably more than just, physical destruction, wasn't it?
Clearly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the source describes it so profoundly as the collapse of centuries.
Not just wood and stone.
Exactly. But centuries of prayers laid into the mortar, of master craftsmanship passed down generation after generation, of resonant design that had shaped the very acoustics of belief for over 800 years.
8.5 centuries.
The grief we all felt wasn't just for lost art or history, though that was huge, of course. But the source points out it was grief for resonance itself. And this underscores a really crucial point. Resonance is not optional. It is essential.
Resonance is essential.
The fire, in its awful power, accidentally revealed something fundamental about our connection to these structures.
How so?
It highlighted this universal human understanding of building not just for, immediate use or for ourselves, but for eternity, for future generations, for something transcendent.
Something bigger.
Right. That deep connection to enduring structures that shape our experience, it goes beyond specific cultures or beliefs.
The sheer scale of building something like Notre Dame. It's just mind-boggling when you really stop to think about it.
It truly is.
Started in 1163, took nearly 200 years. That's 10 generations of work.
10 generations.
We're talking hundreds of architects, masons, sculptors, glaziers, carpenters, all literally giving their lives to this one project. The source mentions trees felled in the 12th century, seasoned for decades, specifically for the forest, that huge timber frame hidden above the vaulting.
That hidden structure, yeah.
Can you help us wrap our heads around that kind of commitment, that devotional nature, knowing, like the boy we started with, that most of them would never see it finished?
Absolutely. And that painstaking effort, the meticulous planning, the sheer multi-generational commitment, it was deeply devotional, far beyond what we think of as construction today.
Different mindset entirely.
Completely. The materials chosen weren't disposable like so much today. They were selected, prepared specifically to last for centuries, to actively participate in the sacred.
Participate. How?
Well, think about the soaring arches. They weren't built just to show off engineering skill or for some king's glory.
No.
Their height, their curve, explicitly designed to draw the eye and the spirit upward, towards the heavens, or the stained glass. Not just pretty decoration, right? Described as scripture in color and light.
Scripture and light.
A vibrant, luminous visual catechism, teaching people who couldn't read the stories of faith through light and shadow.
Wow. Even the gargoyles, they seem kind of scary.
Well, yes, practical for shedding rainwater away from the walls. But they also had profound symbolic meaning, reminding people that even monsters could belong in God's house, welcomed into the divine embrace.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
The entire structure, foundation to spire, it functioned as a catechism in stone, an immersive lesson in faith and reverence.
A whole world of reverence.
Exactly, building a world dedicated to reverence and audacity, as the source puts it, to spend lifetimes on beauty no one would live to see. It says so much about their priorities, their holistic understanding of the divine.
They knew the environment shaped the inner life.
Deeply. They knew it profoundly shaped the inner life.
So if this connection isn't just symbolic, how does that singing you mentioned happen physically? I mean, when you walk into a cathedral, you really do lower your voice. You walk slower. Your breath changes. It's almost automatic. You might not know why, but your body just does it.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
This is where it gets really interesting, where intuition meets actual physics. That immediate involuntary response. It isn't just psychological conditioning.
That just learned behavior.
No, it's profoundly physical. It is resonance. Sacred architecture, at its best, wasn't about showing off wealth or trying to impress people with size.
It had a purpose.
It was built to tune the soul. Not decoration in a superficial way, but calibration.
Calibration.
Like tuning an instrument. Precisely. The ancient builders, many anonymous, they understood intuitively that space itself could participate in worship. They might not have had our scientific terms or tools to measure frequencies.
But they knew something.
They had this deep, embodied intuition, a profound capacity for listening to how the body felt and responded in different spaces. They knew architecture wasn't inert. It vibrates, it breathes, it speaks. And if built right, it sings.
And that guided them.
That inherent knowledge guided every choice, creating spaces that actively brought the human being into harmony.
Okay, that makes sense. So extending that, what does it mean for a building to literally sing to us? You mentioned a standing wave in physics.
Yes.
For those maybe not familiar, it's a fixed vibration pattern, right? When a wave reflects back on itself in the right kind of space.
Exactly.
Creating these weird points.
Yeah.
Some areas almost silent, others really amplified,
Yeah.
like how musical instruments work, a guitar string, a violin, a pipe organ. They're all tuned to create specific harmonious sounds.
Precisely. And this is where Gothic cathedrals truly embody that principle. Those soaring arches, the ribbed vaults, the carefully calculated dimensions of the nave, the transepts.
They're not just for looks.
Not at all. They are acoustically alive. When Gregorian chant, for instance, is sung in a space like that, it doesn't just echo in a messy way.
No.
It hovers, it lingers. The sound isn't lost in reverb. The echoes cascade with perfect calculated delays. They reinforce the original sound, layer it, enrich it, but without becoming chaotic.
So it builds on itself.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine a phrase sung at the altar. In a properly designed Gothic cathedral, that sound could travel all the way to the back of the nave and return perfectly, just as the next phrase began.
Wow, like a feedback loop.
Creating a true resonance chamber that physically enveloped the worshiper. This wasn't accidental. Which brings us to sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry, okay.
Cathedrals were built using proportions from deep mathematical principles, things like Fibonacci sequences, golden ratios.
The ones you see in nature. Shells, sunflowers.
Exactly. Those patterns are everywhere. Nautilus shells, sunflower seeds, tree branches, even galaxies. They aren't arbitrary. They're organic harmonies. Literally the architecture of life itself.
The architecture of life.
So building with those proportions wasn't just symbolic. It was profoundly participatory. It aligned the building itself with the deep patterns of creation.
So it wasn't superstition.
No, it was a profound, intuitive, and ultimately, you could argue, scientific understanding of resonance and harmony.
The source uses this phrase, stone is not dead, wood is not mute. That really paints a picture.
It does, doesn't it?
Makes you think about how different materials actually carry sound, interact with it, not just sit there. What does that idea of living materials mean for the sound experience?
That's a crucial insight. It raises this important question about why they chose certain materials.
Right.
In these sacred spaces, materials were picked specifically for their acoustic signature, their unique way of interacting with sound waves.
How so?
Well, thick limestone blocks absorb and reflect sound very differently than, say, smooth hard glass. Dense oak beams resonate differently than polished marble columns.
Okay.
These materials weren't just chosen for strength or looks. They were layered for both strength and sound. A cathedral, essentially, was designed to receive praise and then return it.
Return it.
To take the raw human voice and elevate it, amplify it, transform it into something that feels eternal. This is why whispering in a grand cathedral feels so different from whispering in, say, a hotel lobby or an office.
Totally different feeling.
One space, built with intentional materials, carries and amplifies resonance, creating this living acoustic environment. The other tends to absorb, muffle, or just silence sound. The materials themselves are active participants.
Active participants. And it's not just the sound you hear, is it? It's the silence, too.
Absolutely.
Silence in a cathedral isn't just emptiness. It feels like a presence.
Yeah.
You feel this kind of spatial stillness, a charged quiet that settles on you. The height of the ceiling, the curve of the apse, the symmetry. It all creates this unique, almost sacred feeling. What causes that difference?
Your body knows it before your mind can even name it.
You just feel it.
As you step in, your nervous system literally starts to slow down. Your awareness shifts, becomes more inward, more receptive.
Yeah.
Chaos, the constant noise of modern life, it starts to subtly fall away. Why? Because your oscillatory field, what the Source calls the soul, or your energetic signature, it's responding directly to the specific shape and resonant qualities of that space.
The architecture is doing something to you.
It's actively tuning you, recalibrating your internal state. It's not just a backdrop.
Wow.
And in that tuning, something ancient, something deeply innate stirs inside you. You start to remember this forgotten sense of peace, feel a profound connection. You start to listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole being.
A deep communion with the silence.
Exactly. It's a remarkable physiological and neurological effect that goes beyond conscious thought, beyond intellectual understanding.
So if this deliberate, soulful design creates these profound effects, what happens when we ignore these principles?
Ah, the flip side.
What happens when, like the Source says, the church building becomes a warehouse with chairs? When the sanctuary is just a stage, proportions are off, ceilings too low, materials are synthetic, acoustics are flat. What does that do to us?
Well, the human body still responds. It always responds, but not with reverence or alignment.
How does it respond then?
Often with a subtle but definitely palpable restlessness, with an underlying sense of dissonance. The soul doesn't feel invited to collapse in prayer or expand in wonder. It tends to sort of contract in confusion or discomfort.
Something just feels off.
Something feels off, even if we can't explain why, and the truth is, it is off. The tuning is wrong.
It's not just nostalgia for old buildings.
No, not at all. This isn't about preferring Gothic over modern aesthetically. It's fundamentally about physics, about the measurable reality that space shapes the soul, shapes our inner experience.
Architecture isn't neutral.
Never neutral. It either amplifies what we bring, elevating and refining our experience, or it blurs it, flattening and diminishing our capacity for deep connection. Cathedrals were built over generations, meticulously, not just to impress people,
But to attune them.
to actively attune the human being, to create a space where heaven could touch earth, not just symbolically, but physically, sonically.
And when we grasp that,
We start to see the immense spiritual and experiential wealth we might have lost. And crucially, what we might still recover if we re-engage with these principles.
the author shares this really compelling and honestly kind of unsettling story about playing music gigs in casinos.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading that.
He describes this disorienting, soul-dulling effect. No windows, no clocks, just calibrated lights, sounds, even smells, all designed to keep you locked in the now.
Trapped in stimulus.
In this feedback loop of stimulus and dopamine, he calls them spaces that do not care for your soul, spaces that subtly erode your sense of self, your sense of time. He actually had to quit a good-paying gig because of it.
That profound internal misalignment, feeling spiritually drained.
Exactly.
And that anecdote, as jarring as it is, it raises this important, maybe troubling question. It prompts an unsettling parallel.
To modern churches.
The author notes that many modern churches, especially those big mall-style megachurches you see a lot in the Bible Belt, they share some disturbing similarities with casinos.
No.
Often blacked-out ceilings killing natural light, pulsing LED screens dominating your vision, fog machines, stage lights, framing the preacher like a TED Talk.
Theater seating, coffee bars.
Right. Theater seating, coffee bars in the lobby, music that sounds more like a pop concert than traditional worship. The overwhelming emphasis, as the author points out, is on energy, emotion, performance, capturing your attention, not surrendering it.
Capturing versus surrendering attention. That's interesting.
It begs a critical question for you, the listener. Does this highly stimulated environment create something truly eternal? Or just a fleeting emotional high, a temporary excitement?
Yeah.
These churches, the argument goes, have traded the cathedral for the conference room. They've accepted a repurposed strip mall with a screen that tells them when to raise their hands.
That's a harsh critique.
It is, but the point isn't just about aesthetics. It's fundamentally about resonance. Just like casinos are designed to trap attention, disorient you. Many modern churches, maybe unintentionally, are designed to stimulate, not sanctify, to entertain, not elevate, to produce engagement metrics, not mystery.
And we need mystery.
The profound point here is that we were made for mystery. We were made to walk into a space and feel that shift, that internal recalibration, to look up and remember our smallness, to kneel and remember our worth.
Cathedrals did that.
Cathedrals, through intentional design, were built to entrain and tune the soul, to subtly dissolve the ego and align the heart with something greater.
There's another really powerful example of this disconnection at the source. It really hit me.
Which one was that?
At the author's own parish, St. Anne's in Oklahoma, they have a relic of the true cross.
Wow. An actual fragment?
Actual physical fragment of the wood, and relics of St. Anne, Mary's mother, and other incredibly sacred artifacts brought over by Capuchin friars who survived Dachau.
Incredible history, tangible history.
Real pieces of sacred history, vessels of faith. Things that, whatever your beliefs should just stop you in your tracks, as the author says.
You'd think so.
And yet, he notes, kind of sadly, that his Protestant friends don't come. They nod politely, but they don't show up. They don't engage with it.
And that raises this incredibly important question for us today. Why? Why that disconnect?
What's the theory?
The underlying theory presented in the source is that, basically, they don't know how to see sacred things anymore. Their spiritual upbringing, often without realizing it, has been shaped by environments and teachings that push positivity, emotional highs, self-improvement as the main goals.
Instead of holiness or mystery.
Exactly. They haven't really been taught, or maybe haven't experienced, that holiness has weight, that history matters, that matter itself can hold grace. They've been sort of cut off from that tangible experience of mystery.
So when it appears,
when mystery, when the truly sacred, shows up in a material form like a relic, they almost don't recognize it. Because their understanding of faith has been subtly shaped by spaces designed to stimulate, to entertain, but not necessarily to sanctify, not to invite that deep, silent encounter.
it's like a lost spiritual literacy.
That's a good way to put it, a tragic loss of a certain kind of spiritual literacy.
So what does this all mean for us now? The source makes this really powerful, almost unsettling statement. This is not about architecture as ornament. It is about architecture as ontology.
Ontology, the nature of being.
Buildings actually form us, shape who we are, much more deeply than we usually think.
And this is where it gets incredibly profound. When we strip away that intentional, resonant design, replacing those time-honored techniques and materials with, concrete boxes, synthetic fabrics, giant screens with lyrics.
What do we lose?
We don't just lose beauty, we lose resonance. We lose that profound field effect of sacred coherence that the church, in her wisdom, spent centuries cultivating.
And the soul misses that.
And the human soul, however modern or pragmatic we try to be, still intuitively longs for that coherence. This is precisely why so many people feel spiritually dry, even in churches packed with activity, programs, constant stimulation.
It's not that God isn't there.
Not necessarily, it's that the frequency has shifted. The environment itself, the sanctuary, has been replaced with a simulacrum of worship, an empty echo, a hollowed-out imitation of what once powerfully formed saints and connected generations to the divine.
A subtle violence.
A subtle but profound violence of aesthetic dissonance, a kind of spiritual malnutrition from lacking resonant spiritual architecture.
Okay, so let's shift into liturgy itself, the traditional forms of worship. To an outsider, they can seem slow, repetitive, maybe overly formal.
Sure, that's a common perception.
But the source frames it completely differently, as something much more profound than just routine or rules. How does liturgy connect to this resonance idea?
Indeed. Liturgy, viewed through this resonant lens, is presented as a multi-sensory frequency architecture.
Multi-sensory frequency architecture.
Okay. It's not just words and gestures. It's a meticulously crafted choreography of light, sound, posture, and space. And crucially, it's designed not to express, but to entrain. Not to entertain, but to tune.
Entrain and tune, not express or entertain.
Exactly. This moves us way beyond seeing worship as just an intellectual or emotional thing. It engages us somatically, neurologically, maybe even on a quantum level. It's designed as participation in a cosmic field.
Participation.
It challenges us to see liturgy not as a performance we watch, but as a deep, holistic process of alignment and recalibration for our whole being, bringing the scattered self into coherence.
That's a huge idea. Let's unpack the body itself being an oscillatory or resonant system. That might sound a bit out there to some.
It might, initially, yeah.
But the source gives biological examples. Our nervous system's electrical signals, the vagus nerve regulating heart rate and emotion, mitochondria as cellular resonators, even DNA vibrating and responding to electromagnetic fields, influencing gene expression through frequency.
Right, cutting-edge stuff in quantum biology and neuroscience. The body isn't a static machine or just chemical reaction.
It's a resonance system.
A complex, dynamic, incredibly sensitive resonance system, constantly responding to subtle inputs, sound, light, rhythm, space. Now imagine placing this intricate human instrument inside a meticulously designed cathedral.
What happens?
Well, the nave, the main body or ship, acts as this long echo chamber, tuned by the stone and arches to amplify chant in these slow, shimmering waves that physically wash over you.
You feel it.
Light through stained glass isn't just brightness, it's a color-filtered waveform, literally painting sacred geometries, luminous stories on your skin, engaging your cells.
Wow.
The chant itself, slow, modal, non-metered, floating, breathing, carries specific frequencies into your chest cavity, resonating with your organs like a tuning fork.
And the movements.
Yeah.
Kneeling, rising.
Not random, not just custom. They are precisely choreographed ritual entrainment, designed to bring the body into specific alignment, physical and spiritual coherence with space and the liturgy. It's deeply multi-layered.
It's fascinating how traditional liturgy uses these non-linear, looping, repetitive rhythms. Refrains come back, prayers repeat, motions echo. That's not just for tradition or memory, is it?
Not at all. That repetition is incredibly deliberate. It's a direct application of phase locking from physics.
Phase locking.
It's where oscillators, repeating at the same interval in a shared environment, start to synchronize, even if they start out of phase.
Like clocks on a wall.
Exactly. The classic example. Pendulum clocks on the same wall eventually start swinging in perfect unison. Or think of fireflies blinking randomly, then gradually starting to flash together across a whole field.
Okay.
Similarly, humans chanting, moving, breathing together in a resonant space naturally slip into coherent waveforms. Their heart rates align, brain waves entrain to a common frequency. Cortisol, stress hormone, lowers, oxytocin, bonding hormone, rises.
Physically synchronizing.
Yes. Now add the layers of deep meaning, the scripture being recited, the sacrament offered, it becomes somatic theology.
Somatic theology.
Meaning, you're not just saying words, you're weaving them into the fascia of your being, the connective tissue of your body. You're not just hearing scripture, you're literally entraining to it, embodying its truth, letting it reform you from the inside out.
Wow. And the medieval builders, they obviously understood light, even without modern physics terms, using those high clerestory windows, the big rose windows. How does light play into this resonance?
What's truly fascinating is how stained glass does way more than just decorate. It actively refracts white light into meaning.
Into meaning.
Each color has its own distinct frequency, its own energy signature. Filtered through sacred narrative images of saints, angels, Bible stories, it becomes more than color. It becomes resonant memory.
Resonant memory.
Physiologically, your eye gets that light waveform, the retina converts it to electricity, your brain translates it into neurochemical responses that evoke awe, wonder, the sacred. It's photonic entrainment.
Photonic entrainment, like light therapy.
Exactly. We understand this now. Hospitals use blue-rich light for circadian rhythms, knowing light affects serotonin, melatonin, immune response. Now imagine the effect of sacred, filtered, color-drenched light on someone in the charged silence and resonant chant of a cathedral.
That's powerful.
The glass doesn't just decorate, it participates in the sacrament, actively shaping, deepening, transmitting the spiritual experience, bathing you in grace, frequency by frequency.
And the sound, Gregorian chant. It's beautiful, yes, but the source says it's engineered for coherence.
Exactly. Though it sounds simple, it's engineered with incredible precision. It lacks syncopation, avoids abrupt shifts or driving beats.
It just floats.
It floats, it breathes, follows natural breath patterns, letting the body relax and open. And crucially, its rhythm and melody naturally match those slower theta and alpha brainwave rhythms.
The ones linked to meditation.
Yes, associated with deep meditation, healing, contemplation, mystical experience. Modern studies actually show chant decreases cortisol, reduces heart rate, increases parasympathetic tone via the vagus nerve.
The rest and digest system.
Right. And it synchronizes EEG coherence across brain hemispheres. Basically, it brings the body into deep resonance. It literally makes you more receptive, more porous, more open, more fully human by aligning your internal systems.
Okay, then the source brings in this big framework. Quote, quantum oscillator theory of everything. Core idea. The goal of every system is to stabilize coherence. Sounds profound, maybe a bit abstract.
It is profound, but it's also quite intuitive when you get it. Quote suggests everything, from subatomic particles to galaxies, inherently seeks harmonious alignment.
Okay. How does that relate to liturgy?
The theory says drift leads to dissonance. Misalignment degrades information, but resonance creates a feedback loop, a system that, once synchronized, becomes self-reinforcing.
Like an orchestra tuning up.
Perfect analogy. First, cacophony dissonance. Then the conductor brings everyone into sync with the score, powerful, coherent, self-sustaining symphony. That's what liturgy aims for.
Taking our scattered selves.
Exactly. Taking your oscillatory field, your soul, your energy constantly disrupted by modern chaos, fractured by distraction, competing frequencies, and gently, methodically, locking it into phase with what's called the divine frequency of the logos.
The logos. The divine order.
The underlying divine order, the fundamental truth or creative principle. Liturgy achieves this through the intentional space, ritual motion, specific sound like chant, curated light. It creates an environmental resonance loop.
A loop between soul and space.
Where your soul and the sacred field of the divine vibrate together, reinforcing each other, deepening coherence. Once you're locked into that harmony, grace flows.
Not metaphorically.
Not just metaphorically, grace flows as resonance, as a tangible, energetic exchange. This is why the Church insisted on liturgy for centuries. Its fundamental, even scientific purpose is to tune.
Like an instrument.
A soul, like a voice or a string, is only as strong as the frequency it echoes. And when it echoes the logos, in a space shaped for that very purpose, the result isn't just temporary beauty or emotion, it's deep, lasting transformation.
Wow. Now, the message of this chapter, and really this whole deep dive, it can feel a bit confrontational, can't it?
It can challenge modern assumptions, yeah.
But the source makes it clear, beautifully clear. It's not written in anger. It is written in ache, in longing, in love. It's not meant to question your faith, but to gently yet kind of urgently suggest that your spiritual experience could be more rooted, more resonant, more whole.
And what's truly fascinating here is that gentle but insistent reminder of the Church's ancient origins.
Where it started.
Origins not in the strip mall, right? But in the humble upper room, the resilient catacombs, the quiet monasteries, eventually carved into the landscape of civilization itself.
Carved into stone and glass.
A legacy of divine proportion and sacred space that shaped civilizations. The invitation isn't to abandon your path or become a medieval reenactor.
No.
Rather, it's a profound invitation not to trade that rich inheritance for carpet and stage lights, but for each of us, individually and together, to reclaim our own inheritance, this deep human need for resonant, sacred space.
It's still there for us.
The relics, the palpable resonance, the eternal logos, they're still calling through the enduring stone, the luminous glass, the ancient chant, the deep silence, the sanctified form. It's a call to re-engage, deeply, sensually, with something profound and timeless, cultivated for millennia, not for a few, but for all souls.
Which leads us perfectly to maybe the most profound idea in the text. Beauty as an act of resistance.
Yes. Powerful concept.
We tend to think of beauty as, well, a luxury, frosting on the cake.
Yeah.
Nice, but gets cut from the budget. An afterthought. But the source completely challenges that. Beauty is anything but a luxury.
Indeed. Beauty, rightly understood, is a theological force. It is a declaration against chaos.
A declaration against chaos.
To build something truly beautiful for God, to pour lifetimes of effort and skill into it that is resisting the entropy of the age, resisting the natural tendency towards disorder, decay that's everywhere in our world. It's carving into stone what the soul instinctively knows in its deepest moments. that there is a deeper harmony behind all things, that love has form, that truth has color, that heaven, though invisible, leaves echoes, reverberating right here in the material world.
That's why cathedrals took so long.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Generations, centuries. Not because medieval engineers were slow.
No.
Because they built for eternity. They were not trying to please quarterly shareholders or optimize for quick ROI. They were trying to please God.
A different bottom line.
Completely. And in doing that, they actively resisted the tyranny of utility, that relentless modern demand for everything to serve an immediate, measurable purpose. They resisted the flattening of wonder, reducing profound experience to just stimulation. They resisted the commodification of worship, treating spiritual experience like a product to be bought and sold.
The act of building itself was resistance.
Absolutely. The craftsman spending 10 years on one arch maybe only God would see clearly. The glazier telling salvation stories in glass that would outlast him by centuries. The stonemason passing his chisel to his son he'd never see finish the job.
That wasn't waste.
It was witness, an embodied declaration of faith, and it tuned the soul of everyone involved and everyone who entered afterwards.
You don't need to know the physics to feel it.
Exactly. You don't need to understand Fibonacci sequences to feel the resonance in a vault, or harmonic series to feel the hum of chant. The body knows, the heart knows.
Even an atheist feels it.
Even an atheist standing in Chartres or Cologne is tempted to kneel. Not necessarily out of religious belief, but because beauty is not persuasion. It is presence.
Presence, not persuasion.
It doesn't argue for truth. It tells the truth in a language older than argument. Pure form, pure resonance. And it reminds us, gently but firmly, you were made for more.
So bringing it all back to that core, beautiful metaphor, a church isn't just a venue, not a concert hall, not a speech stage, not a motivational amphitheater. It is profoundly an instrument.
An instrument.
And the Mass, or any brightly ordered traditional liturgy, is the symphony it was meticulously built to play. Every gesture matters.
Yeah.
Every posture, every note, every candle, every bit of incense, the architecture, music, silence, light. It's all a score.
And when that symphony is played correctly, when all those elements align in a truly resonant space, something remarkable happens. The soul begins to tune, not to itself, not to passing emotion, not to the preacher's charisma or the band's energy, but to the locus, to that fundamental divine frequency underlying creation.
That's why liturgy and ritual matter.
So profoundly. Because when they're rightly ordered, not scale performance, but living discipline, precise engagement with reality, they create coherence. They bring the scattered self, fractured by modern life, into powerful alignment.
And in that alignment,
The impossible becomes possible. You begin to resonate with eternity itself. The Mass, then, isn't just remembrance or symbolism.
it's more.
It is re-entrainment. It's physical, spiritual, cosmic recalibration. The host itself in this framework is described as the quantum collapse of mystery into matter, the logos becoming flesh again and again, so that you might become fully real, fully aligned.
Wow.
And this profound, transformative event happens in a space forged by centuries of tuned intention. A space that doesn't just house worship, it worships you back, calling your soul into its highest potential.
And that really is the beautiful scandal of sacred architecture, it dares to say. In stone, glass, resin, space,
What does it dare to say?
you are more than flesh and bone. You are wave, you are soul, you are field, and your life, your very being, is meant to echo something far, far greater than yourself.
Profound truth.
We invite you to reflect on that and maybe consider how you might seek out or even intentionally create more resonant spaces and experiences in your own life.